I'll just be ranting and raving in the bedroom at night, like, because it is processed so deeply. I'm getting better at it, but I used to have just torturous nights after a really heavy production.
I gotta say, I'm very excited to chat with you about this movie. I watched it last night, and it is such an intense ride. I love the characters. I love the atmosphere. It all comes together so well. What about the project really sparked your interest to be a part of it? Was it the script? Was it your character?
Yeah, I had seen Luke Sparks' Occupation Rainfall franchise, and I was just amazed at what he could do with such a tight budget. I was just really inspired by this new young filmmaker that I hadn't been aware of. And so we reached out to him and just said, is there something that we could maybe do together, and just kind of getting the dialogue going. And we started. He sent me one script, and we sort of started developing it together. And for whatever reason, we couldn't get it going. So then I got a phone call from David Oyelowo for Bass Reeves, and he was developing that. And I told him that I would join him on that. And then that got pushed. And so I called Luke back and said, is there some way that we could, fit that film into this time slot? And he said, we can't get that one going, but here, read this. So he sent me, bring him to me. And it was so different than anything he'd ever done. I was really struck by Tom Evans' script. It was just so intriguing that his inspiration was the scene in Casino of Joe Pesci being driven to the cornfield. And he just thought, it's the notion struck him, like, what would that ride be like? For two characters taking, a character unwittingly, to their demise. What would that be like, and how would that transpire? I thought that was a really, interesting sort of seed to start from. And then I also loved the contrast of the two characters, the driver and passenger. Driver being, holding his cards really tight to his chest and being kind of this quiet, obviously damaged character who was dealing with a lot. And then the passenger being this, energetic motor mouth that just drove Driver crazy. And yeah, there were so many things about the script that I just loved, but those were the things that struck me right away.
Well, the wait clearly paid off well for you and Luke to collaborate, because it came together so well. So you talk about the clashing characters, and I'm curious, you're stuck in that car for much of this movie. What was it like developing a rapport with Jamie and finding the dynamic of what these two characters are with one another?
For me, when I first read the script, I wanted that Chevelle to be almost have its own identity, to be like a third character, this kind of like this fire-breathing dragon that they're riding, to their demise. And I always saw it as acting as kind of like a catalyst that bonds them, that because they would never otherwise have those conversations, and it wasn't until passenger asks about the car and driver opens up a little bit, because it's such a precious thing to him. You can see the way he treats it. He doesn't want passenger to mess it up. He doesn't want him to touch anything. It's kind of the only thing that he has left in the world. And I thought that was really powerful. And so it kind of, it bonds them, like, about, to open up about themes like fatherhood and morality and family. And so that was really important. And that's that's really how Jamie and I, built those characters, was kind of keeping to our sides of the vehicle until the moment came where we could find something to talk about that didn't, annoy the crap out of Driver.
So with Jamie being such a motor mouth, then did Luke ever give him the opportunity to riff? And did you ever find yourself having to sort of react to that in Driver?
Yeah, exactly. We tried to stick to the script as much as we could, but it was a 16 day shoot, if you can believe it. I mean, that's just an insane schedule. Less than $3 million, 16 days. So we had 3 5-day weeks. So it was just full bore ahead, all hands on deck, independent filmmaking. So it's incredible that Luke delivered what he did, really. So sometimes improvisation works in that situation. Sometimes it doesn't. You really need to be very disciplined. But Jamie was great. There was times where he would, and Luke would allow him to go off, and it was great. It was perfect. Because sometimes you need something to energize a scene that is just sometimes feeling stale because you are stuck in a heavy dialogue moment that just, yeah, for whatever reason you need. And two, you're shooting nights and everybody's tired. So sometimes those inspirational, organic moments sort of help bring a reaction that you wouldn't otherwise get. So Jamie was fantastic. And yeah, he was perfect for the role.
I'm glad you got to have that collaborative experience with him. I wanted to talk about Driver's look. I mean, he's obviously the very grizzled look, but the goatee in particular was something that just struck me with its appearance. How involved were you in developing Driver's overall appearance?
Well, funny you say that. Like I say, David and I had agreed to do Bass Reeves, and so I started growing out my hair and my beard for that production. And so when we circled back and Luke and I found Bring Him to Me, I said, one caveat, I have to keep my whiskers and my hair. But it was just something that we thought was also a really unique look that we hadn't seen in a crime thriller getaway driver film before. So we thought it really worked. And it also, too, because of what Driver had been through, I don't want to, spoil the third act, but he's dealing with a lot of grief, and he's been through a tremendous fall, and so it made sense to us that he really wasn't sort of taking care of himself, and he wasn't trying to look slick.
No, I definitely agree with you. I feel like it fits him very well as someone who, like you say, is cards close to the chest. So why should he care about how his hair looks?
He's dealing with grief and addiction, and he's sort of spiraling out of control in terms of what he owes and what he's running from. And so, yeah, I think it worked for the anguish and the stress of the character.
How do you go about then, with this quick of a shoot, getting into the mind of the character, but then also ensuring that you are separating yourself from all of that anguish that, you have to envision when you're playing the role?
It's really just the themes that you read in the script, the guilt and consequences and addiction and grief. Those were like very present themes that are kind of percolating under the surface for Driver. Obviously, we don't, none of that is revealed until much later in the story, and then it comes full circle and it starts to make sense. But I just immersed myself in his role as a father, his role as a getaway driver. All of these things that he's dealing with. You just hold on to that throughout. I have a really hard time separating myself. It's such a weird juxtaposition. Like I like to work in sort of a method way where I stay in character throughout the production, not after work if I need to discuss scenes with the director or what have you. I can step out of it after we call wrap, but I'll have I'll sleepwalk and sleep talk for several weeks after a production, which is pretty challenging for my wife, having to bring me back to bed, and I'll just be ranting and raving in the bedroom at night, like because it is processed so deeply. I'm getting better at it, but I used to have just torturous nights after a really heavy production like that, and so that's the challenge of taking it on maybe too deeply. I don't know, but I also don't know how to work any other way. So I figured let's just, if it ain't broke,
don't fix it. I mean, hey, it works for you. Again, you captured Driver so well. So I mean, whatever you got to do. Before I let you go, you've mentioned Lawmen a few times, and obviously we know how your character turns out in the show. But I mean, it seems like David sort of indicated maybe going an anthological route with future seasons of the show, and Taylor as well. What are your thoughts on possibly coming back as a different character within the Lawmen universe, or even popping up in a different Sheridan show if the opportunity presented itself.
Westerns are my wheelhouse, man. That's my weakness. Anybody who picks up the phone asks me to do a Western, I don't care what it is. Yeah, I would love to work with Taylor again, and of course David's a dear friend, and our writer Chad, just amazing people, incredible cast and crew. I had so much fun on that production. So yeah, I wouldn't hesitate. But I do think they're going to focus, possibly if they do a second season, they'll focus on another lawman, another famous lawman. Yeah, it'd be a blast to work with them all again. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. It was a tough decision to do that project because David, like I say, is a friend. He came to me about a year before the production and asked me if I would play, his nemesis, and took me a while. I said, you got to give me a few days with this one. I was very fearful of that character, and also because you just know how your job as a character actor is to deliver and convince people that you are who they're watching, and sometimes it's hard for people to forget that. It's hard for people to allow you to step out of it, and I don't want to. As a character actor, I love what I do, and so I don't want to be typecast in those types of roles. But I also love my friends, and I want to support them in their passion projects, And so when David called, it's pretty tough to say no, and then when you step into it, you got to deliver. But it's pretty terrifying at times with those roles because you got to go to places that you're not very comfortable with.
Esau is someone who did not deliver a lot of comfortable moments, so I can only imagine. But I mean, who knows? If they do end up going with a different Lawman in season 2, hopefully they find a way to bring you back. I'd love to see more of you in that universe. But in the meantime, man, I really look forward to spreading the word about Bring Him to Me. So thank you, and have a good rest of your week.